displayed. The smells of her delicious meals reach you, and you feel yourself drawn to her. She wants you to come to her, to dine with her, and have a relationship with her. You feel yourself moving in her direction. But suddenly you hear a second voice, sweetly calling from the other side of the path. This voice sounds strangely similar at first. Let all who are simple come in here. Stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious. You look in her direction, and a second beautiful woman vies for your attention. She too has a house on a hill. Her invitation sounds intriguingly tempting, promising secret delights. Okay, open your eyes. Who are these women? The text of chapter 9 tells us that the first one is wisdom, and the second one is folly. But who are they really? The key comes from the location of their houses. And this is where understanding the context and the setting helps us. In the Near Eastern culture, the hills of the town were reserved for houses of God. So on one hill, where a woman is calling out and saying, "Come to me," the woman wisdom, that woman represents God and God's ways. The other hill, where the woman's calling out and is promising secret delights, that woman represents folly and represents the little g God, the idols of the world. So for a simple person, for the gullible person, they're swayed. Which one? Know the secret things or the things that can be known? The God that reveals himself or the secret things, the idols of the world, the temptations? So let's take it, as we dig into this, let's take a look first at context. Now, when you want to look at the context of Scripture, we always start a little bit before where our actual chapter begins. So we're starting at chapter 9. Let's go backwards a couple verses to chapter 8 and look at verse 34. Verse 34 says, "Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors and waiting at my doorway." Notice the imagery here. Here, we're waiting at a door in chapter 8. Now we move forward a couple verses to chapter 9, and wisdom is calling out to come into my house. So there's an invitation to enter into the house. So we go from waiting at the doorway to entering into a home. So you see, we're dealing in this poetic imagery, and we're going to learn how poetry is actually helping us understand what's going on here. All right, so we're entering into the door. She's urging us to enter. In chapter 9, the son is wrestling. Do I enter into the house of the wise woman or the house of the fool? And we're going to see three types of people here: the wise person, the simple person, and the mocker. And the imitations of these two women are framed in poetry, which helps us understand it. So I want to look at the board here, and it's this one right here. Let's write some details here on the board. The first part of chapter 9 right here, these verses talk about woman wisdom. These verses here talk about woman folly. Now, remember how last week we talked about parallelism? I spent quite a bit of time talking about it. In poetry, you'll have double lines that relate to each other. Here you've got double sections that relate to each other. And it's interesting if you actually diagram out, and this is on your notes. Did you find it on your green sheets? Diagram it out, you see you have the same outline that applies to both sections. So this is like a parallelism. So the first thing is the preparation for a meal. And the first thing we learn is that we have two names of the women. First one is, we've got wisdom over here, and we've got folly over here. And then we have activity. So the activity is the calling out, which you've got there. And then the second one is the location of the houses. So we've got the woman, both of these two women are calling out, and then you have the son trying to decide which place do I go to, which hill do I go to. The invitation is to the simple here and to the gullible, and then we also have the offer of symbolic foods. This sets us up for a comparison and a contrast between wisdom and folly. And then the conclusion of the matter, it's life or death. Here, wisdom offers life. Here, it's the way that leads only to death. Again, I would ask the question, okay, that's nice, a little poetry, little symbolism, little symmetry or parallelism, doesn't really apply to me. And again, I would take you back to this and consider, if you were a poet, what phrase off of your little assessment would you pull out and write a story about? And could it look like this? the two spectrums here. Any one of the items on here, we could pull out and write a little poem about our own life. It could be written about my life. So that's the so what about this. Poetry helps us in really just a few words, and especially words that are memorable, to develop a concept like a contrast between wisdom and folly. Now we're going to turn to another chapter. Let's look at chapter 26. And I've given that to you on the back of your green sheet. You've got the whole section. We're going to look at verses 1 through 12. We're going to dig into the details here. Let's read it together. I'll try to go slow so we can get the whole group reading. Okay, ready? Like snow in summer or rain in harvest, honor is not fitting for a fool. Like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow, an undeserved curse does not come to rest. A whip for the horse, a halter for the donkey, and a rod for the backs of fools. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be like him yourself. Answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes. Like cutting off one's feet or drinking violence is the sending of a message by the hand of a fool. Like a lame man's legs that hang limp is a proverb in the mouth of a fool. Like tying a stone is the giving of honor to a fool. Like a thorn bush in a drunkard's hand is a proverb in the mouth of a fool. Like an archer who wounds at random is he who hires a fool or any passerby. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. This section of Proverbs provides an excellent study of the application of poetry to our life. So let's look at it in more detail. And I've got some of it on the back. I won't turn it yet. Looking at verse 1, like snow in summer or rain in harvest, honor is not fitting for a fool. That first phrase, honor is not fitting for a fool, provides the overview or the summary of the entire 12 verses. Okay? So what we're going to be looking at is honor is not fitting for a fool. And we're going to see that theme coming back in different ways. Now, to look at it more specifically, we're comparing it to something that's in nature, like snow in the summer or rain at harvest. Now, those of us that used to live in places that have snow, if it snowed on the 4th of July, that's really unusual. Okay? In Israel, when it rains during the harvest time, that's also unusual. In fact, when it rains during harvest time, that's damaging. It can damage the crop so that they can't use it. And if it snowed in the summertime, that would be rain too. It would turn into rain. That would be damaging to the crop as well. So not only is it a strangeness that there would be snow in summer or rain at harvest, it's also a damage. So if you compare that, it's like snow in summer or rain at harvest, so is honor that's not fitting for a fool. So why are we comparing those? The idea that, okay, honor is not fitting. It's not a good thing for a fool. It's not good to give a fool honor. In fact, it can actually cause damage, probably to others around, by giving that honor. Moving onward to the next verse, like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow, an undeserved curse does not come to rest. Now, how do these two relate to each other? Compare that to verse 1. What we don't recognize in English is the poetry that actually appears in the Hebrew. And take a look at the words honor and curse. Honor in Hebrew is kabed. That's the root word. Kabed is the same root that we pull the word glory or the glory from, which actually means weight or heaviness. So that's honor. And then you have, in the next phrase, you've got curse. And the word for curse is actually, in Hebrew, is kalal. Kalal actually means light. So you have, in Hebrew, you have an easy contrast. People would recognize right away. Heavy, light. All right? So now we're looking at verse 1. There's something about heaviness, and verse 2 is something about lightness. Well, there's the